Here are the 10 celebrities you probably thought were white or Hispanic or even Latina, but are actually African American. When The Rock first stepped onto the wrestling scene, people didn't like him. I mean, they were yelling all sorts of profanities and booing him off stage. One of the reasons why he received this initial wave of vitriol is his lack of a defined character identity. He would walk onto the stage as this ambiguous character that didn't really fit into what people were used to seeing in wrestling. The Rock has rarely identified with his African American heritage and rarely discusses it. From a mile away, you would assume he was Hispanic, but that just isn't right. The Rock is African American. His father is of Black Nova Scotian heritage and his mother is Samoan. He was born in California and grew up mostly in Pennsylvania, besides spending a brief few years of his childhood in New Zealand. In photos of him from when he was younger, we can see his afro picked to its full capacity. He has his own unique sense of cultural identity because he has his own unique mix of cultures that he belongs to. I remember watching Glitter in 2004 and thinking, "Woo, that white lady can really sing." She was born on March 27, 1969, to her parents Patricia, an Irish woman, and Alfred, an African-American man. When Patricia was pregnant with Mariah, the entire family disowned them because Patricia wanted to marry a black man. Things didn't get easier when they moved. When they lived in New York, their neighbors poisoned their family dog and set fire to their car because of their racial prejudices. In 1997, she released the song Outside, which describes how people trying to put her in a box has affected her self-esteem. Ambiguous, without a sense of belonging to touch somewhere halfway, feeling there's no one completely the same. Mariah has always wanted to identify with every single aspect of her identity. However, especially because it was the early 2000s, she was often typecasted as a white-passing African-American person. She received a lot of flack from people who believed that she was abandoning her African-American identity. Maybe you got a clue from the characters she usually plays in films and television. It would be a little weird if she played the character she played in that one show and wasn't actually African-American. Not wrong and not any less funny, but yeah, a little weird. Maya's father is Jewish and her mother is African-American. She has always spoken about how her African-American ethnicity has affected her perception of the Hollywood industry, especially about how it compounds on her Jewish ethnicity. When she first started out on Saturday Night Live, she felt outcasted when she preferred to play non-race-specific roles because she knew she just wasn't going to get them a lot of the time. In a separate weekly incident, people would make comments about how thick and curly her hair was because it needed a lot of blow-drying to get under the wigs. Every week, a different person would ask if something was burning while her hair was being blow-dried. Put your claws away because we're not here to attack her for being a Nepo baby. Although she's also a talented African-American actress. Rashida is the daughter of Peggy Lipton and Quincy Jones. Yes, that Quincy Jones. Like Maya, Rashida is Black Jewish, as her father is African-American and her mother is an Ashkenazi Jew. She grew up more connected to her Jewish heritage as her mother was her primary caretaker. She attended a Hebrew school until the age of 10 and was raised as a Reformed Jew. However, she never went back to Hebrew school and never got to celebrate a bat mitzvah. In the 1970s, the interracial marriage between her parents was still seen as somewhat unacceptable. When Rashida was a part of the Black Students Association at Harvard University, Tupac Shakur made some pretty crude comments about her parents' interracial marriage. She wrote him an open letter expressing her disappointment, and he later apologized for his remarks. This one will be a little hard to believe, but it's true. Halsey identifies as African American, and it's not just for show. Her parents are Nicole and Chris Frangipane. Her father is of African and Irish descent. For that reason, Halsey is technically considered African American. She has spoken extensively about how living her life mostly not identifying with that aspect of her heritage has affected her ability to connect with that side of her family. She doesn't very much look like them, and that's made her hesitant to speak openly about her connection to them and unique experiences in life as a biracial person. She posted on Twitter saying, "You're not half black, you're lying. You look 100% white. 19 years of people convinced they know more about my genetics than me." People often refute her claim to her own heritage and make it a complicated interpersonal war of whether or not she should be allowed to identify with it, despite not looking African American in the way people expect her to. She thinks it's rude, but she does understand why some people might be a bit hostile with her. In a BuzzFeed interview, she said, "I've always been proud of who I am, but it'd be an absolute disservice to say 'we' when I'm not susceptible to the same violence." She later clarified that she didn't claim her identity to pretend that it had the same impact on her as it does on most African American people. She just wants to be proud to own her identity. And you should be proud to click that subscribe button and notification bell to keep getting subversive Black Hollywood content like this. I remember listening to one of Logic's albums and thinking, yeah, this is pretty okay before... Wait, is he allowed to say that? Bryson Hall was born in Rockville, Maryland to his white mother and African-American father. Yes, you can put the pitchforks down now. He grew up in an unstable household and has many half-siblings between either of his parents. He was constantly surrounded by addiction, with his mother being an alcoholic and his father a cocaine addict. Logic has always identified with his African-American heritage, although he struggled to feel that he fit in as a child and in his teenage years. However, at the forefront of his career, his most popular music never discussed his explicit experience of being a racialized person in America, and that led a lot of people to assume his ethnicity and race based on his appearance. Another technical loophole: Amber Rose is considered African American. She was born in Philadelphia on October 21, 1983, to her parents Dorothy Rose and Michael Lovenchuk. Her father is Irish and Italian, and her mother is from Cape Verdean. Because her mother is from Africa, she is African American. Amber has had quite a lot of conflict with the way that she identifies, though. She doesn't consider herself African American because, in most African countries, being mixed race is its own relevant identity. No such identity exists in the popular vocabulary of American culture, which most of the time forces mixed people to identify as African American by default. In a BET interview, the host told Amber that she considers Amber as black, and Amber took a slight offense to this, saying that she wants to identify in whatever way she sees fit. The internet didn't take well to that, and Amber was accused of denouncing her black identity. During an interview with Refinery, she said, "I embrace all of my cultures. You don't have to pick and choose a side. That's what keeps racism alive." Blake was born on March 17, 1989, to Tommy Griffin and Gail Griffin. His father is of Afro-Haitian descent, and his mother is white. In an Us Weekly interview, he reflected on how this affected his identity growing up, particularly because he grew up in Oklahoma, where it was seen as unusual for him to want to be in a relationship with a white girl. Her parents said they wouldn't allow it. However, Blake's parents always gave him the strength of character to never feel like something about himself was a disadvantage. When living in LA at 19, he became more secure in himself because of how many other people around him were different too. He didn't feel left out anymore. No, he's not Latino or even Afro-Latino. I wonder why we all thought that. Maybe it's because of the 1 million times he has played characters who are Hispanic-coded like Dom Toretto. Who knows? Well, in real life, Vin's mother is white, and he has never met his father, although he does guarantee us in interviews that he is definitely a person of color, which is a comforting solace. People have pieced together that because Vin claims his parents couldn't stay together due to anti-miscegenation laws in America, it's likely that his father was African American. His real name is Mark Sinclair, and plenty of people believe his surname indicates that his father was most likely African American. Vin has confined the majority of his acting career to playing no race-specific characters. He isn't particularly fond of labeling himself and would rather just do whatever role feels most natural to him. Wentworth Miller is technically African American but also English American. He was born on June 2, 1972 to Roxanne and Wentworth E. Miller II. His mother is white and his father is African American and is of Jamaican heritage. Just a year after he was born, his family moved back to Brooklyn. He wasn't exactly intended to be born in England, but his father was studying at the University of Oxford on a Rhodes Scholarship when Wentworth was born. He's been very open about his personal identity and how he views himself. However, he does feel that it made for a pretty complicated process of self-identification in his early years, especially because of how the way he looked determined what people assumed about him. In 2004, he was nominated for a Black Reel Award for his role in The Human Stain. This should have been a clue to how he identified himself. There will always be a conflict for Miller, because people assume that he upplays the African American aspects of himself because he feels more comfortable claiming an identity of color rather than engaging with his European heritage. Surprised to find that these are Black Hollywood stars? Well, click on this next video and keep finding out more about the dazzling world of Black Hollywood. Did you know these actors were African American?